That is, if I can make a mistake, I'll probably make it. All right, so over here we've got Visual Studio Code, and here we've got WebStorm. Um, and the Visual Studio Code version is one that I kind of worked on in advance because trust me, you guys don't want to didn't want to watch me think through um, all the different ways that I tried to get this to work the way I wanted it to. Um, so, but let me show you what this one looks like and kind of where we're going. This one. Here we go. So here we've got the game board, and if I select a checker, I get this little selected icon or indicator behind it, which isn't all that great. It looks like it's a little off-centered because of the shading on the stone itself. But if I click a checker, it just selects a different one. So it's aware, like it's not trying to move it to that cell, right? So anytime I click a checker, it just selects that checker. And then if I click on a black cell after that, it will move the checker there and then unselect it. Okay. And if I click on it now, so let's say I go to take this one, right? Whoops. So let's say I go to take this. So I move here. This guy has to get taken. I just double click on it, and it will go into the off area. Okay. So that way we. What's that? He's in timeout. Yeah. You have been a bad white checker. So when we get to the point of having individual checkers that are actually getting moved around, we suddenly need to account for them even when they're off the board, and just like, and this is one of the reasons why the physical metaphor actually is super helpful. Like, what do I do with a checker when I take it? I take it off the board, okay? And so you kind of have to have that, some sort of a similar construct within your application. So that's how it's going to work, okay? But if you think about it, some of these things are actually fairly large departures because what we've been doing is we've been clicking on black cells. We haven't been clicking on checkers. We've been clicking on black cells. And we've just been saying, do something to the checker that's in this cell. Okay? Well, now we need to differentiate between clicking on a black cell that has a checker in it and clicking on a black cell that doesn't have a checker in it. Okay? And the code for that actually gets relatively complex. Okay? But it could be simplified if instead we just click on checkers and click on black cells. Right? The problem is that all the cells with checkers in them are also black cells, right? So I thought through a couple of different ways of skinning this cat. One being just yes, yeah, very skinned, naked cat running around. Yeah. I think the first way I tried was kind of what we've been doing is just clicking on black cells and saying, okay, is there a checker in this cell? And if there's a checker in this cell, select the checker. And if actually, let me back up. Is there a checker in this cell? Yes. Is that checker already selected? Yes. Then take it off the board. Otherwise, select it. And then if there's not a checker in this cell, is there a checker selected? Yes. Move that checker here. Otherwise, don't do anything. Right? I kind of like, there's kind of a lot going on there, right? Like it's kind of a lot to think about, and it can be a little bit error prone. I definitely got it working that way. I think that was the first way that I got it working. It wasn't pretty, you know. Then I thought through like, okay, well, what about clicking on a checker? That makes selecting a checker and unselecting a checker, and pretty simple. Like I click on a checker, and if it is selected, then take it off the board. If it's not selected, select it, and that's it. That's all you do when you click on a checker. Either remove it from the board if it was already selected, or select it if it wasn't. So that's great, but the problem is the checkers are in the black cells. So I can't click on a checker without also clicking on a black cell. That makes sense? Okay. So I actually ended up handling that inside of the, when I render the checkers. First thing I do is I say, add this click handler to all the black cells, right? The one that says, well, let me back up a little bit. So I added the click handler to the checker, and I added to the black cell. I said, if I click on a black cell, just move the checker here. If there's a selected checker, put it in this cell. Okay. Problem is, I ended up putting checkers in cells that already had checkers in them, right? Or it tried, like when I clicked on it, yeah,
Nice.
depending on the order that it ran, it tried to put itself in its own, like it's like, oh, I've selected myself and put myself here, you know. So it just got really, you know,
Oops.
yeah. Um, so it gets a little stupid. So the problem was that both those click handlers were working. So instead, I said, all right, at the beginning when I'm rendering a cell and I'm rendering the checkers in the cell, right? First, tell all the black cells get the move a checker here handler, okay, and then render the checkers. And right after I put a checker in a cell, say don't move any checkers here because there's already a checker here, right? Like, so I just removed the click handler for those, and so then I ended up with like all of these cells don't have a click handler in them. All of these ones do, right? So only the empty black cells have the click handler. Okay, does that make sense? I probably could have handled it inside of the, like I could have left it on there and said, is there a checker here? Yeah, then don't do anything. Otherwise, move the selected checker here. I could have handled it that way, but then you have two click handlers firing and you don't really need them. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're going. Okay, so today we have a couple of minutes. We're going to go ahead and just do some real simple things to have ready for Monday. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is this template.js is not really very well named anymore, right? Because this template.js is kind of handling all the checkers, right? It's checker, it is rendering the board, and so maybe we could move that to board.js, okay? And it's rendering some cells and stuff like that. So it seems at this point, rather than having like, some board logic and then all this rendering logic, like we can just have board logic and checker logic and put them in board.js and checker.js, and it might help us to think about and organize our code a little bit better. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. And that's probably about as far as we'll get today, which is not to say all that far. So the first thing we're going to do is rename template.js to checkers.js. So refactor, rename, checker.js. All right. Now, WebStorm is super kind to me because it says, hey, look, in board.html on line 17, you're importing this thing in here. And then it also sees that if you actually look at, let me cancel this refactor real quick. If I go and open board.js, I've got a couple of items in my to-do list here, renaming the template.js and maybe moving a checker. Okay, so it's seeing that I said I wanted to do that. It's noticing that in there. So refactor checker.js, and I'll say yes, do the refactor. And if I go look in board.html, you'll notice on line 17 here it changed it to checker.js. Now if you I don't think Visual Studio Code will do that for you, so just remember when you rename your JavaScript file you need to go rename where it's getting imported. Okay, and so we are done with this, so we can get rid of renaming that. Now it would be good for us to maybe move a few things around. Okay, so like render the board probably should be in board.js, right? Okay, it doesn't matter which file we declare these things in, so it'll just be easier to keep track of them. So I'll cut it from here, and I'm just going to go put render board in to board.js. Save it. Okay, and then render row. Well, that's a board thing, right? Render cell. Okay, so I'll just leave in here the stuff that deals with the checkers. Okay, so drawing the board belongs in board.js, and handling checkers belongs in checker.js. Okay, and we're not going to go into all that too much. These parity methods and the cell color, those are definitely board methods. So let's go ahead and get rid of those and put them over here. Save this and make sure that it all still runs. So it doesn't matter which well, it doesn't look like it runs. Which file you declare stuff in. Render board is not defined. Render board here. So here. And maybe this didn't get saved. Yep, that was the problem. So, all right. So now that is working. Okay, I think we're good now. So we've got which checkers selected up here at the top. Then we have our checkers data structure, right? And then we have render checkers, render checker, and select checker. Okay, so this is all our checker stuff. And then in the board, we have all our board stuff. And sometimes it's actually a little hard to determine, does this have to do with a board or does it have to do with checkers? Because like there's a method that we'll eventually write called move checker here, right? Which means put a checker in this cell. So you're kind of doing both, right? And so you just kind of pick where it goes. And that's just anytime you slice things up, you have to make some of those difficult calls. So let's go ahead and make the next step, which is going to be to change our click handler to be on checkers instead of black cells. Okay, so if we only want to do select checker if we're clicking, and in fact, if we think about it, that kind of makes sense. Like let's look at the way it's defined now. If I click here, it's trying to select the checker that's in this cell here, and there is no checker in this cell. Okay, I click here and I get an actual checker, right? Let me hide that. Sorry about that. Okay, so I shouldn't be trying to select a checker if there's no checker in the cell. Okay, so let's go over here. Well, somebody tell me what I need to do to change that. How do I? Well, what's making this happen right now? When I click here or here, it's selecting a checker.
Magic.
Magic. Magic. Nope.
The magicalness
Wizard.
The magicalness of the computer.
No, I mean what method is it calling?
Do you mean function by that?
I'll give you a hint. Yeah, what function? Yeah, what function is it calling?
It would be calling like the selected checker function.
Select checker function. Yep. So it's calling select checker, right? And there's something. What am I doing to this to make it try to select a checker? I am clicking it, right? So it's a click handler, right? That's saying somewhere there's a click handler that says when someone clicks on this thing, call the select checker function. And that click handler is
that the toggle function?
It was. That was our old click handler, the toggle function. Give you a hint. The answer is not on my face. It's in your code.
Is it select checker?
What's that? We're
Select
calling
checker.
select checker, but where are we assigning it to the click handler?
In the sky.
No.
In the document ready function.
The document ready function, which is in what JavaScript file? Board.js. Yep. In board.js, in the document ready function, we're saying, hey, grab me all the black cells and add the select checker function as its click handler. When somebody clicks one of these, select a checker. Okay? So we don't want to do that with black cells anymore. What do we want to do it on?
Checkers.
Checkers. Okay, how do we identify a checker?
Checker.
Checker. Okay?
Would you go where it says like dot black dot cell and put checker in there?
So just this?
Mhm.
Yeah? Is that what we want? We'll try it. Try it. It's 12:55. We're running out of time. Well, I got nothing.
Oh.
No.
How do I locate it? There's 3 types of locators. Elements, which are like divs or buttons or A tags. There's,
Is it by the class?
by the class. And what prefix do we use to represent class? No, that's ID. Pound is ID.
Dot.
The dot, like we had dot black, dot cell. In other words, it has the class black and it has the class cell. So we want to do, what class is this going to have?
Color.
Huh? Not color. Checker. Yeah, it's going to have the checker class. So dot checker.
That sounds like a trick question.
Yeah.
In other words, I want to do this to the checkers. So go get me everything with a class of checker. Now that's assuming, when I inspect this, that it actually has the class of checker. And if I go look, what's the class on this?
Checker.
Checker. So let's try it. I click on it, and let me go look at my console, and let me clear out all this junk. I click on it, and nothing's happening.
Yay.
That's unfortunate. I was actually expecting something to happen there. So, and nothing did, which makes me sad. And makes me wonder if I saved this. Be the second time today.
Yeah.
Nope, that's not it. It should. Dot checker. That ought to work. All right. Well, I'll have to take a look at that and get back with you guys. Oh, I know why that's happening. I know exactly why that's happening.
Eureka, you found
Enlighten
it.
us.
Because
Okay.
it didn't like you.
Um,
So it decided to not work.
But now it feels bad for you because you were sad.
No.
console.log.
Oh.
I'm, oops, adding the click handler to the checkers now. All right. So, oh, well, that is a problem. Now, look at my log statements and tell me what my problem is.
Is it because you played the checkers? Or how do you call it?
I'm trying to add the click handler to checkers that don't exist yet, right? Like I'm adding the click handler now, and then what's the next thing I do? I render the checkers. So the checkers don't exist yet. Yeah, good job, Ava. Good job. All right, cool. Well, hey, listen, we will. Yeah, we'll pick up from there. So all I want you guys to do over the weekend is make sure you're all caught up. Make sure you're selecting checkers properly. You can use the black cell method to select the checkers. That's fine. And rename your just reorganize your JavaScript files. Okay, so that it's checkers.js and you've got your board stuff over in board. Okay. All right. Cool. See you guys on Monday.